Fastlane presented by Capitalism.com. This is the show about building businesses and investing the profits so that you can live life on your terms. And now your host, the future owner of the Cleveland Indians, Ryan Daniel Moran.
Hello, Freedom Fastlane fans. Satori Prime boys are back. Ilan here. What's up, bro?
What's up, man?
So it seemed like the last one, we got a ton of great feedback, which was awesome. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. We're here to deliver some really amazing stories and interesting news. We've done a whirlwind adventure, done all sorts of incredible personal development, mindset experiences, which we'll share a few of today. And the goal of today's podcast is twofold. One, we want to talk to you today about the most powerful three-letter word in the English language. And two, we want to talk to you about getting yourself out of your mind. I mean, like literally out of your mind. I want to start off the podcast today with a story. And this is, I'm not going to say his last name, but first name is Mike. He's a recent client of ours, and he actually became a client after listening to the first podcast we did here with you guys. He reached out to us, requested some coaching. And so I'll give you the short version of it. We basically got on a phone call, spoke for about 25 minutes. And at the end of 25 minutes, Mike says, I want to join your program. I said, fantastic. You know, here's the cost. Here's what you got to do, et cetera. And he's like, all right, I just going to need to think about it and give me a day and I'll get back to you. And so a few days went by. He reaches back out to me. I sent him some other information, some quotes, things like that. And what I saw was holding Mike back was commitment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like saying yes to something. And so I shot him a quick little video right before we left on this amazing trip to Colombia, basically saying that when you say yes to something, and we'll go into the whole detail of it, the process begins. You don't have to wait to actually undergo the process. The process begins as soon as you commit and say yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I left, I went to Colombia, I came back. He was still on the fence and thinking about it. And now this is about 3 weeks after we had this amazing call where he's like, yes, I'm in, right? So at that point, we come back and I'm in just a completely different space, just totally aligned to who I am and what I am for people and this and that. And I just shot Mike this little video and I said, listen, buddy, this is the last video I'm making you. And here's what's up. The same thing that you are doing right now is stopping you from having every dream be realized and every goal be realized in your life. The same thing that you're wishing-washing and sitting on the fence about, either say yes or say no, but don't sit on the fence. The fence is painful, right? And I just kind of let him be. I was like in the, kind of the shit or get off the pot moment. I just let him be. And I didn't hear back from him for 4 or 5 days. And at this point, I wasn't attached to working with him or anything. I was just like, I'm going to let this guy go through his process. 4 or 5 days later, I get a message like, I'm in. Thank you so much for that video. I watched it a bunch of times. I realized that what you said is absolutely right. I'm in. So to get into our program, the first payment you have to make is $5,000. This is a $20,000 program. So he pays the initial installment and heads off to work. Now, when he heads off to work, he goes to the gas station to get, I don't know, whatever it was, like gas or some grocery or something. $20 bill flies out of his hand and he's searching everywhere for it. He's like, oh man. And just in that moment, he realized how attached he was to money. And all this stuff starts coming in. Now, this is after he said yes. This is after he made his $5,000 payment. So shows up to work. His boss calls him in, and they've been doing some major reorganization. Boss calls him in and basically says, hey, Mike, we've noticed that while we're going through this reorg, you've really picked up the slack here. And as a thank you, we're giving you a $5,000 bonus. So he's just like, you have to be kidding me. Yeah, literally, I said yes, I made payment, I committed, and right away $5,000 shows up. And I was like, Mike, that's so amazing. He goes, yeah, but that's not the end of it. I was like, okay, tell me more. So 2 or 3 days later, his accountant sends him his tax returns. And on his tax returns, he was expected to pay a certain amount after speaking to the accountant. And the taxes came back, and he actually owed $7,000 less than what he was supposed to pay. Meaning that in a span of 3 days, $12,000 came completely unexpected to him by the virtue that he said yes and committed. Now, here's the best part. We didn't even speak or begin our coaching till at least 3 or 4 days after this all happened. So this is what I want to talk to you guys about. And I'd love for Guy to share his insight on the power of yes and how it creates your future the instant that you commit and say yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we've seen this phenomenology at work in our life for years, right? You know, like, so with Ilan and I let's go ethereal and then we'll come back down into the physical realm. So when we start looking at the universe, right, in reality, time and cause and effect are conversational phenomenons, meaning they occur inside the world of language, inside the world of thought. Outside of that, it really doesn't exist. So we kind of live in this quantum universe that's actually acausal, which means from you to get from point A to point B is not really a linear or time-driven process, even though it may appear as such, because we use distinctive language to create that. So then you wonder, like, how does stuff like that happen where you start creating these like synchronistic type things in your life, or you start noticing how much synchronicity is actually in your life? And I think that's the power of yes. I mean, in language, it's yes. In the vibration of the body, it's I'm altering and choosing to change the vibrational frequency that I'm at, and something else starts occurring as like, let's attract this to me, right? Because now I'm a yes in my body. I'm not just a yes in my mind. It's like when you're in love, right? Anybody who's like fallen in love, you're like, yes, let's get engaged. Yes. And then all this beautiful stuff starts unfolding in that relationship that otherwise just wasn't, really present or available. So that's kind of the phenomenon that we want to look at. When we start kind of unpacking this, like I know for Ilan and I'll just use a few examples where like when we were younger and we would want to do like a course, or we'd want to go on vacation, or even we want to hire a coach. That happened about a year ago. And it's outside of our quote unquote price range, or what we think is reasonable, right, to pay for something. We'll oftentimes step back, we'll have those conversations, and we'll feel how it feels for us. And then we'll have the conversation. Now, when the decision or the choice is driven by money, it's choosing for you. You're not choosing. The money's choosing. So oftentimes, Ilan and I will sit, we'll be like, hey, look, if money and time weren't a consideration, are we a yes? And it's not just like a yes. It's like, are we like a full yes to this? When we're a full yes, we go and do that thing. We become a yes and we align to it. That's how we got our coaches here. I mean, we're in a coaching program right now that cost us $150,000. And initially we're like, damn, that's a lot of money to be putting out. And then, we got off the phone and we just got, this is the person we want to be around. This is an education we want to, get into. And like our lives have never been the same. Now, had the money made that choice, we would have never had that experience. Yeah. I remember a trip to Italy back in 2008, 2009, whatever it was. Again, like outside of our price range, really expensive trip, really expensive program. And we looked at each other and said, hey, do we want to do this program? We're like, yeah, money wasn't there. And we figured it out. And in every one of those situations, what I have to say is the universe seems to like bold action that makes you a little bit, if not a lot of it, uncomfortable. And in that yes, what you're kind of saying is like, hey, I don't know what's going to happen. There's kind of this void in front of me. I've never operated this way before because I've never pushed myself to operate this way before. So I really don't know what's going to happen. Now, the mind doesn't like that. Because when the mind doesn't know what's going to happen, it lacks a survival element to it because the mind enjoys predictability. So you saying yes to something that you don't know how to predictably create the outcome through your action, the mind's like, I don't want to do that. Of course it doesn't want to do that. It occurs like a lack of survival. However, every time Ilan and I have done that, the abundance that's flowed into our life, the synchronicity that's flowed into our life, the relationships, and like honestly, the effortless wealth that has come in to support that vibrational frequency, time and time again, I actually can't think of a situation where that didn't happen for us. Mm-hmm. And I believe that the escalation, velocity, the growth of our lives is in a direct correlation, if there is such a thing, which we kind of said there isn't, is in direct correlation to our ability to say yes to things that are bigger than the scope of what we believe we can accomplish.
I'm a big believer that the reason there is such a gap between the 1% and everybody else, the 1% are simply willing to say yes to things that they haven't figured out, that they don't know how they're going to work, and they just take bigger risks and chances than other people. Why? Because they've figured out how this law works. Mm-hmm. The bigger and bolder your action, the more the universe rolls out a big ass red carpet for you and says, thank you so much for playing. We've been waiting. So one thing that I want to point out to you guys is you have a really big butt. And I'm not talking about the butt that fits in your jeans. I'm talking about the butt that's controlled your entire life. So for Mike in that story, for example, the but was, he was a fuck yes to be coached, right? The but was, but my finances, but my money. So for the majority of you guys and girls on here, I'm sure that's a huge but. If money wasn't a consideration, would you be doing a lot more things? If time wasn't a consideration, would you do a lot more things? So whatever is stopping you from taking that opportunity, for taking that chance, being more vulnerable, being more raw, whatever that but is, that's the thing that's stopping you and has stopped you and robbed you of the life of your dreams. Now, the only way to remove that but once and for all, you guessed it, you got to take that action. You have to say yes. In spite of all of that noise in your head and fear and anxiousness and nervousness and all uneasiness. And I'm telling you, just like in Mike's story, every time, it stopped amazing me. That's how effective this stuff works. It literally works 100% of the time.
It's magical, and that could be normal. Like your state or your default state could be a magical state. People look at these things and these magical happenings happen to them, and then they say, wow, that's amazing. Or they say like, oh, that's too good to be true. Or look at this coincidence. And what's happening is you're receiving this energy, and then in the next breath, you're saying, I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy of receiving this. And you push it back. It's like a volleyball coming at you. You're like, fuck, I don't want it. And you throw it back the other way. So I want to just contextualize this a little bit, guys. We say that you can live either from inspiration or from your memories. So when an opportunity comes knocking, you can kind of operate one of two ways. You can either let circumstances choose for you, which is like, I'm living in a past-based reality. In the past, something reminds me of this. It scares me. It doesn't work. So I'm going to make my decision from there, which means your past is now dictating your present and your future, which means all you're going to get is more of the things that happened in the past before. Again, in the world of predictability, the mind loves this. If the mind had its way, you'd be sitting on the couch eating Cheetos, drinking soda all day long, because guess what? That's safe. And a lot of Americans and a lot of people all over the world, guess what? That is their lives. Obesity epidemic is a bunch of people trying to feel safe, basically, in their lives. Not too much threat in their lives. Then there's this whole other thing, like living from inspiration. Now, living from inspiration is another way of saying living in spirit, with spirit, right? Which means like the things that I'm pulled towards through my passions. And a lot of times we do get opportunities to follow and be in alignment with that, which we're truly passionate about. And then we let fear dictate that. And then you feel like shit because you go against your own programming, passion, and heart. So each one of us has this choice to make. And I believe we're going through this like evolutionary time period as a species where for a lot of us, survival has been taken care of. I mean, I can say like my generation that lives here in America, we don't have great wars. We have a spiritual, philosophical war. And it's not really a war. It's just we're going through this evolution where we really do get, because of technology and a lot of other niceties in life, to really look at it, be like, am I really serving what I would love to do? Am I really serving people with my passions? Or am I just kind of out there like living the way that it was, picking up subconscious programming from past generations, making that true, and then living in that world today in this modern society where truly, if you want today to follow your passion, you can. The resources are available to all of us. Every single one of us, most of us, I would say 90+% of us, have a smartphone in our pocket that has access to worldwide. As much information as we have is available at your fingertips every single day. The question you got to ask yourself is like, I don't think anybody needs to fault or blame themselves for the programming they had while they grew up. That's just what you grew up with. It is what it is. You're not broken. There's nothing to fix. However, to choose and stay the same way, if you're not loving your life, if you're not doing what you're passionate about, if you don't have a juicy, amazing fucking relationships, that's on you, brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
That's your responsibility. You're choosing to stay that way, to operate from your memory. Because I know that there are moments in your life where you have operated from inspiration. You have felt that vibration. You have been in that kind of love. And you know that that's available to you. And that could be your default state that you experience every single day. And it's just a matter of like training yourself to be that way.
Yeah. By the way, Neil Donald Walsh, we haven't even spoken about this. Neil Donald Walsh came out with book 4.
Literally at 3 a.m. last night, someone told me about that.
Yeah. So I've been listening to it. We already have it, by the way, in Audible.
Awesome.
Yeah. Amazing. So one of the things that he reiterates in this one, which you just touched on, is that our God-given right is to live in freedom. That's our God-given right. That's like homeostasis for a human being is freedom. And so to Guy's point, if you are suffering, if you are making your circumstances wrong or certain situations or certain things in your life wrong, that is your choosing. You can have freedom from that. You're not handcuffed to that situation. There's not someone with a gun to your head saying like, you have to live this way. You choose to live that way, and you choose to live that way because the devil you know is better than the devil that you don't, at least to your brain. What I mean by that is that the thing that's on the other side, which you don't know how that's going to work and you don't know how that's going to play out, that is terrifying to the brain. So where I want to now take this conversation is, and this kind of came out of listening to that book a little bit, and it's something the Guy and I have been talking about to our clients quite a bit, is how to get out of your own mind. Like, lose your goddamn mind. And I mean that in the best way possible. And bro, what I've added to it, so this is going to be a good test because Guy hasn't even heard this, is find your soul's song. Lose your mind and find your soul's song. You were born with a song. You were born with a gift. There is a vibration constantly on in your body, and every single one of you has felt it. Have you fallen in love? Was your head any part of that experience? I'll take it even simpler. Have you ever put on an outfit in the morning and it just felt wrong and you just took it off, right? It just felt wrong. You didn't think like, no, it just felt wrong. Have you ever walked into a room, a bar, a restaurant or something, and something in your body was like, nope, don't want to be here. And you walked out. And if someone asked you why, you would say, I don't know. It's a feeling. That's your soul's song. And it is constantly transmitting these messages to you. And when we mean what we train our people on, and this is what like Mike experienced, when you train yourself to lose your mind, which is the thing that is creating all the buts, creating all the constraints, telling you how weak or stupid or not good enough or not worthy enough or whatever, constantly, when you're able to just separate from that and start truly listening to that vibration in your body, that's where you start living, like Guy said, inspired in spirit. And in spirit, as we've been learning and experimenting with, is fucking easy, effortless.
You can set your frequency, because really what it is not, so with a lot of the stuff we talk about, you know, we've done cognitive sciences for a long time, conscious languaging, neurosciences, all that stuff is functional for the brain because it has you notice something. And then there's a second piece to it, which is deeper. So there's like a tethering to reality and there's a tethering to like your spirit, right? So when you start thinking about like, okay, well, I want to deepen my understanding. We use the word understanding. I would relegate understanding to the mind, and I would relegate knowing to the body. Like there, you know, when you just know something, you just have a feeling. Like I just know I'm in love with this person. I don't understand that I'm in love with this person. I just know that I'm in love with this person. I know I'm supposed to go to that party. I know I'm supposed to go to that event. Something's going to happen when I'm there. And then you're like, oh my God, and that thing happens. You go, wow, that was such an interesting coincidence. And again, we use that hyperbole and like fantastical language because we're saying it's too good. I don't believe that could actually enter my experience. And in that same moment, you say, I don't want that. And I push it away. So it's like all this goodness is coming at you and you're like, it's too good. I can't accept it. So I think we're living in this paradigm where we've we've manifested a reality where we prop up people who go through a lot of pain, right? Like we've said resiliency is good. It's like, how resilient are you? And it's like, if you've been through more shit than me, I'm like, wow, I'm impressed. You've been through a lot of shit. And by the way, this goes into like the hazing culture. Like even in I know Ilan went through like a hazing when he was in college, right? Like that's our culture. Wall Street, you're fucking hazed, right? It's like, we're going to put you through the ringer. You got to earn this shit. Yep. So we've lived in this paradigm of like, we've propped up resiliency as it's a good thing. And here's the thing. It's formed the world that we have in whatever way that it has. However, on the opposite side of that, just as difficult as it is to deal with pain, for most of us, it's as difficult to accept pleasure, if not more so.
I was going to say more so.
More so, right? So like, and if you think about how we operate, we spend a lot of our day like, hey, look at me, I'm so great. Someone validate me, someone approve me, someone tell me how good I am. And then somebody compliments you and what happens? Are you like, oh yes, thank you so much. Amazing compliment. Or you're like, I don't really deserve this. And you go back to your resiliency pattern. So there's this like way where you can start noticing, because it's really everything Ilan and I are talking about. Do not try to understand spirit. You can notice things that spirit is up to, though, which means like start noticing the synchronicity and synchronizations in your life, your relationships, opportunities that come to you. Now, if everything's a challenge to you, you won't see the synchronicity. If everything that appears in front of you, like, oh, what an opportunity. I'm grateful. Thank you for this opportunity right now. What am I learning? Even if it's quote unquote negative experience for you, look at how many negative experiences in your life have turned into blessings. And that you're like, if you look back, you're grateful for it. So why not apply that grateful vibration, that love vibration, that all that good stuff that comes from that directly to every situation in your life, see the opportunity in it, start noticing consciously and through your heart the synchronicity that happens. As you notice the synchronizations, that's what the mind is going to start seeing. It's like, oh, that's interesting, that happened. And don't push it away. Notice how amazing this is. Don't call it a coincidence. Just be like, wow, that's amazing. That's happening to me. Thank you. Give me more. Now, as you start noticing those situations, your brain is always looking for evidence. And what it really cares about, again, is survival. But if it starts noticing these synchron patterns, it will start noticing that the synchronization is actually more beneficial for its survival than anything it was doing before. And I don't know about you guys, but I believe the heart is the true master of the house. And somehow we've programmed ourselves that the mind at some point kicks in and takes over and starts controlling the entire machine, and the heart is relegated to second place. And I truly believe, because now I'm living from that place, I know Ilan is too, that does not have to be the way humans operate. That's human doing when you operate from the mind, human beings when you operate from the heart. How am I being? How am I feeling? Right? So as the mind starts collecting this information and you allow it to seep in, it's going to be like, whoa, the heart kind of knows what it's doing. Every time I follow my heart, awesome shit happens. Yeah. And I'm loving it. So it's like, all right, well, let me step aside because the heart seems to know what it's doing. And in fact, as I find more evidence, I want to support this feeling by building conscious paradigm shifts and thinking and that all support everything around synchronization. And that's why to some of you guys are like, sounds like bullshit. I resist this, right? You resist it because your mental programming is, I need to be in survival. I need to be resilient. So on and so forth. Here's the thing. You're fucking exhausted.
Yep.
You go to bed every night and you're like tired and you're not connecting with your wife or your spouse or the people in your life or your kids. And you know that deep down inside. And you lie to yourself and you probably go through your day and you do the rigmarole and every day is the fucking same. That's why when people ask you, how's it going? You go, it's fine, or same old. I haven't used that language in years because no day for me is just fine. Every day is fucking spectacular and it's never the same old. There's magic happening in my life every day, but I had to create a context and a construct to live from that life is effortless and easy, and I default state at magic. Magic is not something to work up to. Magic is our common sense. Work up from there.
It's interesting, especially when you coach entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs have this thing, and I know this is going to go in the face of what a lot of the people are touting out there, right? Work hard, hustle, grind it out, all that kind of stuff. I'm telling you, that's an old school mentality. The most successful people I know, and just want to be very clear, it's not that we don't work hard, it's that our work is inspired work because it doesn't come from an ego place that has to prove something to someone at the end of the race. It seems to me like a lot of entrepreneurs feel like if they grind it out and worked for 19 hours a week and a day, and like at the end of this thing, when they get to that finish line, they can be like, look at me. And guess what? You get the same medal. You get the same prize. You get the same amount of money. Like, just because you worked harder and somebody did it in 3 hours, like, you don't earn more.
Yep.
The only thing you rob yourself is longevity and health. And so to this, I want to kind of get into like, well, how, right? This is where our brains are going to go. How? And I want you to just we're going to give you some tips. And I want you to understand that the thing that's asking how is not your heart. Your heart knows.
Well, the end of that how question is, how do I do this?
Yeah.
And we want you to really consider that everything we're talking about here is the phenomenology of it is outside of the realm of doing it all. It's all in the world of being, and there's nothing to do inside the world of being. And guys, we're called human beings. We ain't called human doings. And we've been doing human doing for a long time. And just to specify and go back to what Ilan said, like a Gary Vaynerchuk is somebody who's mastered doing, but he's also in the realm of being in some ways, but he's all about that hustle and flow and blah, blah, blah. We're not saying that doesn't produce results, just to be clear.
Yeah.
It does produce results. We just believe it puts a mass limitation on there. Otherwise, most of humanity would be operating at a very high level and loving their lives. And when you look around, that's not what you see. So we have to consider that there's something broken with that model and that very few people are successful inside that model, right? So I could tell you that like in the world of doing, you're gonna get stuff because you can build it, right? But you're like controlling and manipulating outcomes instead of being in the greater flow of the eternal consciousness that's really available to each and every one of us. There's the giant data stream we can all tap into, but we tap into it through our bodies, through meditation, not through the mind. The mind is an illusion-making fucking machine. That's what it does. Creates illusion.
And it never turns off.
Right, and it never turns off. And that illusion will become your perceived reality. So ultimately, with the world of doing, where you can receive something, that's like water out of a hose. In the world of being, it's like water out of a freaking waterfall. It's just like, you're like, oh, holy shit, because there's so much stuff coming at you. And that's why you have to get good at receiving. And saying, I am worthy of getting all this good shit. Because if you're not in that place, when it comes at you, you just don't know what to do with it. So you're like, this is too much. And you start pushing it away. So the real question one of the questions I want to leave you with is like, how good can you have it?
Yeah.
How much pleasure can you take?
Yeah. How much are you willing to receive? So our whole methodology is about having it all. And that looks like having the body of your dreams, the bank account of your dreams, the relationship of your dreams, being the father or mother of your dreams. It really is having it all. There's a lot of people that are really successful in one, maybe two areas in life. How many people do you know that are excellent in all aspects of life? Best body, incredible careers, incredible relationships. Like, show me how many of those exist in the world. There aren't many.
Yeah.
Right? So inspired thought comes from silence. Inspired thought you get every day. How many times a day do you have some random person pop up in your head, or a random restaurant or cafe or something pop up in your head? My recommendation to you is follow that.
Check in.
Don't ask why. If someone pops up in your head, reach out to them. Hey, thought of you this morning.
Everything okay?
99% of the time when I've begun to do this, the response is always the same. Oh my God, I just thought about you.
Yeah.
I wanted to connect you to so-and-so. I was just talking about you. Da, da, da. And I'm like, this stuff, look, our connection to each other is, you can't argue with it.
It's absolute. Yeah, it's absolute.
You might not believe it. You might, whatever. That's just how it functions. We are connected. It's the reason you walk into that room, and when something doesn't feel right, or I'll give you another example, like you walk into someone's house and two people have been fighting, you feel that tension. Mm-hmm. You weren't there for the fight. You have no idea. And you know that something happened in that room. So the more you get out of your mind, I mean, like truly lose your fucking mind and tap into your soul song, you now tap into this natural flow of life. And in that flow, life becomes very easy. So I want to just end, I know we started with a story and that was about someone else. I want to end with a personal story that's happened to us fairly recently that I think will drive this point home, and then we'll leave you guys ways to contact us and things like that. So right before we left for Colombia, Guy and I are sitting there. It was, I believe it was a Wednesday night or something like that. And we kind of started planning what's the next phase of our business, how are we going to grow this business, et cetera, et cetera. And we roadmapped this whole thing and realized that what we need to do is raise $250,000. Okay. Now, getting investor capital for what it is that we do, we know is difficult, this and that. So we really start road mapping, okay, well, how are we going to bring in more business to kind of do this in a quick 30-day window, et cetera, et cetera. So we start mapping this whole thing out. And we're 10 minutes into it, and Guy just goes, fuck this. I'm not doing any of this. And I'm like, in my head, I thought we were just brainstorming, doing something awesome, and I'm just a little shell-shocked. And he goes, you know what? I'm not doing this. This is all in the world of logic, linear thinking, how to, we know this is not how this works. Here's what's happening. Universe, send me $250,000 into my bank account from unknown sources in the next 60 days. And at that point, I was like, you know what? I'm willing to play that game. Like, I know how this shit works. I'm willing to play that game. Next day, I get an email from my accountant. And bro,
I don't even think we put a timeline on it. I think we just said, I just basically said, I feel that we get to receive $250,000 right now. And however that looks, like, how did it show up?
You're right.
I didn't put any parameters on it. There was no time limit because, again, like, all that stuff lives in the world of attachment. If I put time on it, then I'm attached to that timeline. Now, like, every day that gets closer, I'm like, this isn't really going to work. I'm just open to receiving. I'm an open channel. Yeah.
Thanks for that correction. Yeah. So the way Guy said it was, we are ready to receive $250,000 from an unknown source. Universe, make it happen. So next day, I get an email in my inbox from my accountant, and one of the affiliate programs that we run, we got a 1099 from, and they put the wrong EIN number in there. So I call the company trying to get them to switch it. And the woman tells me it can't be done for this and this and this reasons. Oh, and by the way, we've been withholding 28% of your revenue. I'm like, you've been doing what exactly? Oh yeah, we've been holding 28% of your revenue. I'm like, okay, well, how do we get that back? She goes, oh, you'll get it back when you file 2017 taxes, meaning like in a year and a half from now. So I was like, out of curiosity, what are we talking about here? Because, like, is it like $5,000? I don't know what it is. She goes, oh yeah, it's $52,333. And I'm like, I didn't know at this point whether I need to punch this woman through the phone or I should be elated because we just found $52,000 that we had no idea was ours. And then she drops the bomb. Oh, and by the way, this has been happening since February of 2015, meaning that there's all this other withheld revenue there that we also didn't know. So I contact Guy. We figure out there's an error that they made. I call back the next day. I get this woman on the phone. She's super nice. Turns out that we have roughly about $80,000 that they owned up to the mistake and that we are receiving right now. Once we file our tax returns, we're actually receiving it now. So I call Guy and I go, bro, it's 2 days after we've created this thing. And I said, you won't believe this, but we're 33% of the way there pretty much. Super excited, jumping up and down. This is amazing. This is amazing. Now, that same day, one of our personal clients comes to spend a day with us, which is something that we do with our one-on-one clients. And at the end of day 2, he basically says, we've been talking about me the whole time. I haven't even asked what it is that you guys are up to. So I told him, we're in the process. We really want to scale up this one part of the business. And we're looking to raise $150,000 from an investor. And he said, well, it's funny that you mentioned that. A friend of mine just reached out to me a couple of days ago and offered me $125,000 to invest in my business. And I'm not at a point right now where I can actually use it to scale my business. Would you want the introduction? And I'm like, yeah. A day later, I speak to this guy and he tells me, or maybe like 2 or 3 days later, I don't remember. I think it was like Monday or Tuesday at this point. We get on the phone. He's agreed to give us $100,000. Now, he was going to come to New York. I said, no, I'll fly to where you are, which is Charleston, which I love, by the way, and I'll come meet you. So I contact my parents and I tell them, listen, I need to fly up to Charleston. Can you help with the kids? No problem. Why are you flying to Charleston? Well, we raised money from an investor. I want to go meet him, this and that. Now, our parents, have been begging us to put money in our business just because they know the kind of returns that we're able to produce. And we've always kind of said, no, no, no. And he's like, well, why didn't you ask us? Like, we've told you numerous occasions that we want to invest in your business. I was like, wait, so you'd give me the $100,000? He's like, absolutely, we'd give you the $100,000. So now in a span of, this is about like 5 days into it, we have now have the access to $280,000. And it doesn't stop there because the story gets a little bit better. I contact the guy and I'm like, listen, we're actually going to take funds from our parents. This and this happened. He's like, totally understand. Great. Now, we had this other loan that we were taking, which was a really, really expensive loan. And I'm looking at the numbers. And I'm like, look, if we can just pay them off, which is about $70,000, we'd be saving a ton of money. So I contacted my dad before contacting the investor. And I said, listen, would you also be willing to raise this other 70 or should I go to this other guy? And he's like, no, we'll give you the $70,000. It's no difference to us. So in a 7-day window, 7 days from the moment we did this, we raised exactly $250,000 with a potential other $100,000 that's just sitting over there that we haven't even tapped into, that we have access to. We didn't do anything. We didn't do anything. We didn't strategize this. We didn't linearly think of who to contact and how to contact and all this. It just aligned because we were constantly following the next place that our heart was driving us.
And I want to put a small caveat on this because obviously this sounds a lot like The Secret and like the power of intention. There's an element to that with the power of intention. And I'll just say, like, for me, they don't go nearly deep enough because they don't talk about the subconscious reprogramming around self-worth and around receiving. So I want to just point out, like, we've done that work. Not done. We've been doing that work ongoingly for a long time, like reprogramming the vibrational frequency of the body in order to create it as a clear channel for reception. Many of you guys have heard about chakras, right? You know that there's a crown chakra all the way down to your root chakra. So if you imagine there's like, basically you're an antenna and there's like light energy coming down through you. Most people are barely aligned in their crown chakras. Light's barely getting in there. Nevertheless, into the body where there's zero alignment. So it's like if the body has been subconsciously reprogrammed negatively around money, negatively around love, doesn't matter what your mind thinks, there's no clear channel for that to enter through. So it's like, just so you guys understand, like your base chakra, your tantric sexual energy, just like if you look at the universe, like that energy is what creates, right? So like the light literally needs to go through all the systems, hit the base chakra, and then like everything grows from the roots. I don't see a tree out there without roots, right? Everything in the universe has a root as a source and then grows up and out. So it's the same thing here. This is an up and out type of experience where you have to create from the root chakra. And in The Secret, it makes it seem like, think about it and it's going to happen, but there's not enough vibrational alignment there for it to truly show up. And that's why a lot of people are like, well, I have intention. But that's why actually like vision boards and stuff like that work, because you put something in front of you that over time, as it seeps in to different parts of your consciousness, seeps down and changes the vibrational frequency of the body so that it starts magnetizing those experiences to you. And there are ways to significantly increase that process. So I don't want to make it seem like, oh, Guy and Ilan one day decided that they're going to be $250,000 and then this thing like shot out of our ass. There's been a process that we've gone through very consciously and subconsciously now for years, but even like significantly elevated in the last few months as we really started to get clarification on practices that allow for this to happen. So I just want to make sure that everyone knows it's not like, oh, well, great, now I want $250,000, and it's like it's not happening.
So what Guy's alluding to, which is exactly the work that we've done, is you can only receive what you believe you are worthy of. Now, everyone's like, oh, I believe I'm worthy of $1 million. You know how I know that's bullshit? You don't have $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
You have $1 million when you are worthy of that $1 million or believe that you are worthy. So all the work that needs to be done really is to consistently raise your internal vibration, to just continuously vibrate higher and higher and higher. And at these higher vibrational frequencies, you now have access to manifesting things with lightning precision and speed. So instead of, what we want to leave you with is, instead of constantly banging your head against the wall and trying to linearly figure out, how do I do this and how do I do that? Notice how many times a day you're mind will ask you that. It sticks you in this trap because it knows that if you stick in this trap of how to, you do what? Nothing. And it likes where you are. It's comfortable. It knows it can survive that thing. So it would rather stay in this super loop of, thought that never leads anywhere. So I want to offer you guys a few things. One is just be with this conversation. I know for some of you, it might seem so out there. Just play with it. And what I mean by play with it is just notice how much your mind and thoughts run your day. And see if at any given moment when you're thinking things through, if you can instead switch it to feel things through. Does this feel good to me? Does this feel like a yes? If it feels like a yes, trust it and do it. Even if it doesn't logically make sense. It is the next guidepost for you to follow. That will feel you to the next one, and so on and so forth until you manifest. Because what happens is when you try to think things through, you have one very logical way of how you can accomplish that. And it's like putting blinders on, and basically all this other stuff and opportunities that are arising and happening, you are blind to because you know the way to get there. Life has been here for billions of years, creating magical balances in this world. I think it's a little more powerful and a little more versed in how stuff works. So you're either fighting the river and trying to get upriver all the time and putting all your effort into it as much as you can. And then every time you just like find your way, because you eventually have to fall asleep, right? You find your way all the way back down the river. You're like, how did I end up here? What if you just threw the course? Do you ever notice how life always bounces you back to where you need to be? And sometimes it's in a very cataclysmic, catastrophic event. And then you look back 5 years like, thank God that thing happened to me because I would have gone down this path instead of this path and I would have wasted a whole lot of time. So that's really what you guys want to just play with between now and then. And obviously we'll continue this here in the next few months as well to continue this conversation. In the meantime, if you'd like to continue this conversation, we have this on our podcast all the time. You can just look it up. It's the Have It All podcast. You can just check it out.
Or go to satoriprime.com/iTunes or /Stitcher, depending on what platform you use, and it'll lead you there also.
Yeah. And then if you want to reach out to us, I'll just give you our personal emails. It's Ilan, ILAN, @satoriprime.com or Guy, GUY, @satoriprime.com. Or if you're more comfortable with the phone and you want to text us, call us, whatever, 201-815-4414. Satori Prime here to help you raise your vibrational frequency.
And I'll just leave it at this, kind of reiterate, but throw a little bit more in the mix. There's nothing to do here. There's nothing to understand here. Run an experiment. For a week, say, hey, I'm going to live my context out of magic, effortlessness, and easy this week. And then it's not about having to believe it either. It's about what do you notice when that's the frame or lens that you're choosing to view life through. If you walked around all day long and you're like, I'm a love entity. No matter what anybody does, I'm going to fucking love the shit out of them today. Right? Okay, what do I notice when I operate that way? When I'm being that way? When I start knowing myself that way? You can't understand love. You can understand vibrational frequency like it's physics, but it doesn't give you access to anything. And understanding love doesn't really give you access to love either. It's a vibrational frequency, a knowing in the body. So it's like you want to integrate these sensations within you. And as you do that, I guarantee you your life will transform in unexpected, beautiful ways. And as that synchronicity starts happening, it becomes an addiction, like a beautiful dance that you don't want to stop dancing to. And you start realizing the alignment that this has with the greater consciousness. And you notice how finite your mind is when there is an infinite consciousness. Like you can't perceive infinite with your mind.
Yeah,
that's why we use distinctions to try to put things in boxes so it's comfortable for us. But there's this whole gap between where the mind creates and tapping into the infinite consciousness that then fills in the gaps for you. And that's really what we invite you to do, is have that consciousness, that God essence, extraterrestrials, angels, whatever works for you. I don't care. look for evidence for that higher power that's beyond the mind, because where you have limit with the mind, you will find limitlessness in those other energies.
Awesome, guys. Let us know how we did. Reach out to us, Facebook, emails, phone, whatever works for you. Would love to hear from you. And until we see you again, thank you for listening. Have an amazing day, my friends.
Love you guys. Bye, everybody.